in! Right flank!
Move it! Closing on the ridge!
Steady, push her in!
Aye, sir, drive it down!
Hold fast. All right, on 3. 1, 2, heave!
She's holding!
At February 19, 1945, Iwo Jima, a barren volcanic island rising out of a steel-gray sea, Lieutenant Harold Schreier grips the metal pole as the wind claws at his hands. The mountain beneath him trembles with distant thunder, artillery echoing across the island. Behind him, Marines crouch in black sand. Ahead, the summit of Mount Suribachi waits, silent. They plant the flag. A shutter clicks. A moment becomes myth. But the truth, the full truth, is far more complicated. Today, we descend into the stories that shaped a world, and the myths that still echo across it. For decades, the photograph of the flag raising on Iwo Jima symbolized American victory. An image so powerful it eclipsed everything before and after it. But a myth emerged. The iconic flag raising ended the battle. Reality was harsher. The island had been transformed into a fortress. General Tadamaki Kuribayashi's 21,000 defenders were hidden deep underground, connected by 11 miles of tunnel, bunkers, and concealed artillery. The flag raising on February 23rd did not end the fight. It marked day 5 of a battle that would last 36 days. The first flag to rise over Suribachi was small, barely visible from the beaches, but Marines cheered when they saw it. Then orders came. A larger flag was needed for visibility. And for the press, 2 flag raisings, 2 separate moments. One photograph would erase the first and overshadow the cost still to come. At March 1945, the Japanese counterattacked in waves from hidden apertures. Mortars rained down. Flamethrowers burned through tunnels. Marines fought yard by yard, bunker by bunker. When the guns finally fell silent, nearly 7,000 Americans were dead. Over 19,000 wounded. The flag did not end the war. It only marked the beginning of one of its bloodiest battles. Some myths don't arise from lies but from hope. That power of an image, captured in the roar of battle, can feel like victory itself. At June 18, 1940, Loire Valley, France. A young French lieutenant, Jean de Lattre de Tassigny, stands on a stone bridge as German armored cars advance. He orders his men to hold. A single 25mm anti-tank gun fires again, and again until the barrel glows red. For a brief moment, the German column halts. Modern memory often paints France in 1940 as a nation that collapsed without resistance. But the truth is far different. French troops inflicted over 160,000 German casualties in just 6 weeks. The French Air Force flew 92,000 sorties, losing 787 aircraft in the skies over France. And at the Battle of Ston, the Verdun of 1940, the town changed hands 17 times. The myth of French passivity grew from the shock of rapid defeat. A flawed strategy, underestimated blitzkrieg tactics, failures in communication, an outdated chain of command. But across the front, French, African, and colonial soldiers fought until ammunition ran dry. And after the armistice, resistance movements would rise from the ruins. Night, a warehouse in Lyon. Gestapo boots echo through the halls. A French resistance courier clutches microfilm under his coat. He slips into an alley as sirens howl behind him. Across occupied Europe, French agents ran networks of sabotage, intelligence, and escape lines, often knowing capture meant torture or death. They did not surrender. They persisted. Myths are simple. Reality is not. France did not fall because it refused to fight, but because it fought alone against an enemy prepared for a new kind of war. December 6, 1941. Moscow's outskirts. A Soviet ski battalion glides through the snow at dawn. White uniforms, white masks, white silence. Ahead, German soldiers huddle in foxholes, frostbitten and starving. Blitzkrieg, the lightning war, has finally met winter. For decades, Blitzkrieg has been portrayed as an invincible doctrine. But historians now know it was not a master plan. It was improvisation. The The German army was powered not by limitless tanks, but by 600,000 horses. Only 10% of German units in 1940 were fully motorized. And when logistics broke, Blitzkrieg broke with it. In France, Blitzkrieg succeeded because Allied leaders clung to First World War doctrine. In the Soviet Union, the Wehrmacht tore across the plains, until fuel ran short, supply lines stretched thin, and factories beyond the Urals replaced everything lost. Soviet T-34s rolled fresh off assembly lines. American trucks, shipped through Lend-Lease, carried Soviet troops across snowfields. German panzers froze in place. December 1941. The Soviets launch a massive counterattack. Katyusha rockets scream across the front. Panzer crews abandon vehicles encased in ice. General Heinz Guderian radios Berlin. We cannot hold. Blitzkrieg has reached its limit. Blitzkrieg was never magic. It was speed, opportunity, and above all, timing. When the weather turned, and the Red Army rose, the myth of invincibility shattered in the snow. August 9, 1945. Nagasaki. A lone doctor, Dr. Nagai Takashi, staggers through the ruins of the Urakami district. The mushroom cloud still twists above him, blotting out the sun. He whispers a prayer, surrounded by fire. For generations, a single narrative dominated textbooks. The atomic bombs forced Japan's surrender. But new scholarship reveals a more complex reality. By August 1945, Japan's navy was destroyed. Its cities were in ashes. Its rail system barely functioned. Millions faced starvation. Yet the government did not surrender after Hiroshima. It did not surrender after Nagasaki. The key turning point came August 9th, minutes before news of Nagasaki even reached Tokyo, when the Soviet Union declared war and invaded Manchuria with 1.5 million troops. For Japanese leaders, a two-front war meant total collapse. Imperial Council meetings erupted into chaos. Some generals demanded a final battle on the home islands. Others argued surrender was the only path to survival. When Emperor Hirohito finally spoke, his voice broke centuries of silence. He chose peace. August 15, 1945. Japan's surrender broadcast crackles through the air. Families kneel on tatami mats, listening in tears. American troops step onto Japanese soil without firing a shot. Not because of one event, but from a convergence of fire, invasion, and exhaustion. To understand history, we must hold many truths at once. The bombs were decisive, but not alone. Wars rarely end with a single blow. April 1945. Berlin bunker. Hitler's generals spread maps across a concrete table. On every front, red arrows close in. Fuel is gone. Divisions exist only on paper. The perfect war machine has collapsed. In popular memory, Nazi Germany is remembered as highly efficient. A flawlessly organized engine of war. But reality was deeply fractured. Rival organizations competed for resources. Weapons production was chaotic until 1943. Key decisions were based on ideology over practicality. The Luftwaffe never rebuilt after losing pilots in 1940. Efficiency was often illusion, propped up by early victories. The German army fielded excellent tanks, but too few spare parts. Elite units, but crippling shortages of fuel. Advanced rockets, but not enough food for soldiers. The Soviet T-34 cost a fraction of a Panther and could be repaired in the field. American factories produced more aircraft in 1943 than Germany made in the entire war. The myth of perfection masked the truth of imbalance. January 1945, the Ardennes. German panzers roar through the snow during the Battle of the Bulge, but soon run dry. Crews abandon tanks worth fortunes. The Third Reich did not fall because it was weak, but because it believed its own myths. Myths survive because they comfort us. They simplify the chaos. They offer heroes without flaws of victories without cost. But the truth, the real truth, teaches us more. About courage. About failure. About the fragile line between triumph and disaster. The myth of Blitzkrieg, a perfectly engineered war machine, grew from early victories. Poland crushed in weeks. France defeated in 44 days. The Low Countries overrun with breathtaking speed. But behind the illusion of unstoppable momentum were cracks, fuel shortages, overstretched supply lines, tanks breaking down by the dozens, commanders improvising on the battlefield because plans changed faster than orders could reach them. When Hitler turned east in June 1941, the Wehrmacht advanced, but at a cost. The front stretched 1,800 miles. Infantry marched until boots dissolved. Engines froze. Horses died in the snow. And still, the myth persisted that Germany possessed a flawless military doctrine. Reality was more chaotic and far more fragile. Winter. Near Moscow, the snowstorm becomes a wall of white. German vehicles stall. Oil thickens like glue. Rifles jam in the cold. Then, a sound rises from the treeline. A war cry, followed by thousands of Red Army soldiers. Siberians hardened by temperatures that would kill an unprotected man in minutes. They strike the German lines with ferocity. Panzer crews abandon tanks frozen solid. Infantry stumble back through drifts waist-deep. For the first time since the war began, the Blitz stalls. The myth meets the immovable reality of terrain, weather, distance, and a Soviet counterattack 8 divisions strong. Blitzkrieg was not invincible. It was simply fast. And speed has limits. The legend of Blitzkrieg endures because victory came quickly. But speed is not destiny. And in the snows outside Moscow, the world learned that even lightning can burn out. August 9, 1945. Nagasaki. A single B-29 bomber boxcar cuts through the clouds. Inside, Major Charles Sweeney wipes sweat from his hands, though the cabin is freezing. He arms a device no one in the world fully understands. A sphere of steel, plutonium at its core, a mechanism built to recreate the fire of a star. The atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki were catastrophic, killing tens of thousands instantly, and more in the months that followed. But a myth grew from that devastation. The bombs alone forced Japan to surrender. The truth is more complex. In the summer of 1945, Japan's cities were already in ruins. 67 of them had been firebombed. Tokyo itself lost 100,000 lives in a single night during Operation Meeting House. And yet, Japan's military leadership still refused unconditional surrender. Then, on August 8, 1945, something happened that shocked Tokyo more than the atomic bomb. The Soviet Union declared war. 1 million Red Army soldiers surged into Manchuria. Japan's prized Guangdong Army, once considered elite, collapsed within days. For Japan's high command, this meant something unthinkable. Within Japan's Supreme Council, generals remained determined to fight. Some advocated for a decisive battle on the beaches. Others spoke of national suicide, the entire population mobilized to die. Hirohito, the emperor, listened in silence. 2 bombs had fallen. Soviet troops advanced. The nation faced collapse. Still, a faction within the army prepared a coup to prevent surrender. The myth of the bombs as the sole cause simplifies a complex storm of military, political, and existential pressure. Night of August 14th. Tokyo Imperial Palace. Rebels seize key buildings. They tear through hallways searching for one object. The Emperor's surrender recording, the vinyl disc meant for radio broadcast. Outside, loyal guards clash with the conspirators. Gunshots echo through palace corridors. At dawn, the coup fails. Hours later, Hirohito's voice, calm, somber, unfamiliar, reaches millions for the first time. Not from a single cause, but from the convergence of atomic fire, Soviet invasion, and internal collapse. History is rarely shaped by one blow. Often, it is the weight of many forces, political, military, human, pressing all at once. The myth of the bomb stands tall, but beneath it lies a deeper truth. April 30th, 1945. Berlin, the Führerbunker. Above ground, the city burns. Soviet shells fall like thunderbolts. Below, in a dim concrete chamber, Adolf Hitler sits rigidly beside Eva Braun. He whispers a final sentence to his staff, then retreats to his private room. Minutes later, 2 gunshots echo behind the steel door. Despite Hitler's suicide being documented in exhaustive detail, a persistent myth refused to die. Hitler escaped. U-boats fleeing Europe. Submarines bound for Argentina. Secret Nazi bases in Antarctica. Imposters. Doubles. Photographs of a bearded old man said to be him. But the truth is solid. Hitler was surrounded. Berlin was an inferno. No aircraft could land. No tunnel led out. The Soviets held every exit. Witness testimony was clear. Dental records were conclusive. Hitler died in Berlin and the Third Reich with him, because the world struggled to grasp the scale of his crimes and the enormity of the war he unleashed. Because mystery creates shadows, and shadows invite speculation. In post-war chaos, rumor outpaced truth. FBI files collected letters claiming sightings. Journalists chased ghosts, but historians returned to the bunker, to the evidence, to the final hours. The bunker doors are battered open by Soviet troops. The air is thick with smoke. Inside Hitler's study, they find the remains, burned, broken, unmistakably human. Nearby, charred fragments of a cyanide capsule. The pistol. The carpet stained dark. The dictatorship that threatened the world for 12 years had ended. In a single silent room. Myths grow because truth can be unbearable. But sometimes the truth, however grim, offers the only path to understanding. Hitler did not escape. No shadow survived him. Only the lessons of what he unleashed. World War II is a landscape of facts and a forest of myths. Some noble, some comforting, some dangerous, all powerful. Tonight we walked through 5 of its greatest legends. Not to diminish them, but to see them clearly. Because truth, even when tangled, even when painful, gives history its meaning. Rumors flourished in the chaos that followed the war. Soviet disinformation fueled confusion. Joseph Stalin himself hinted Hitler might have survived, feeding suspicion, mistrust, and paranoia. But the evidence inside the Führer bunker told a different story. Witnesses described the final moments with chilling clarity. The smell of bitter almonds from cyanide. The gunshot that followed. The lifeless bodies carried to the courtyard. Gasoline poured. A torch struck against the concrete. Flames consumed the last symbols of the collapsing Reich as Soviet artillery shook the city. Yet the myth persisted, drawing strength from fear, and from the human desire for unfinished stories. Berlin, May 1945. Soviet troops advance into the garden of the Chancellery. They find scorched earth, charred bones, and fragments of skull. The remains the world debated for decades. Autopsies, dental analysis, testimony from secretaries, guards, officers. Every trail led to the same stark conclusion. Hitler died in Berlin. No hidden bunker in Argentina. No submarine escape. No mysterious double slipping away into the shadows. Just a dictator, cornered by the consequences of his own war, ending his life as the city above him died. Some myths survive because the truth feels too small, too human, too final. But history demands clarity. And in the bunker beneath Berlin, the Third Reich ended. Not with escape, but with ashes. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor. The USS Arizona erupts in a pillar of fire and smoke. Sailors plunge into burning oil. Alarms howl across the harbor as Japanese aircraft bank sharply into the sun. It is a moment etched into American memory. A symbol of shock. A symbol of unpreparedness. For years, a myth endured. America entered the war unprepared and stood alone against the Axis. Yet beneath the shock of Pearl Harbor lay years of mobilization. The U.S. Navy had already begun expanding in 1940. New shipyards roared with activity. Factories converted for war. The Selective Training and Service Act, the first peacetime draft, was already in effect. And the United States was not alone. By the time America entered the war, Britain had fought for 2 years. China had resisted Japan since 1937. The Soviet Union mobilized more soldiers than any nation in history. The Allies were fragmented, but they were never alone. American troops arriving in North Africa and Europe were often inexperienced. But the myth that the U.S. industrial machine awakened overnight is false. The transformation was rapid, but not spontaneous. By 1943, American factories produced 96,000 aircraft, 29,000 tanks, 65 million shells, and half the world's weapons. Convoys stretched from San Francisco to Sydney, from Halifax to Murmansk. Liberty ships launched faster than U-boats could sink them. The Allied coalition, US, UK, Soviet Union, China, and dozens more, became the largest military partnership in history. Not a solitary effort, but a global one. June 6, 1944. Normandy. The air trembles with thousands of engines. Allied soldiers descend through surf and smoke. American, British, Canadian, Polish, Norwegian, and French forces strike the Atlantic Wall together. This was not the work of one nation. It was the culmination of alliance. Intelligence shared, logistics intertwined, sacrifice spread across continents. On the beaches of Normandy, the myth of American isolation is washed away by the tide. No nation won the war alone. Victory came not from isolation, but from unity, the combined resolve of millions standing against tyranny. Myths rise where memory fades. They fill the spaces between what we know and what we wish had been true. They simplify chaos. They offer heroes without flaws, villains without weakness, victories without cost. But history is not a legend carved in stone. It is a mosaic, fragmented, human, imperfect, made from millions of voices, each carrying a piece of the story. Tonight, we stepped into those fragments. The flag that did not end a battle. The nation that fought more fiercely than memory allows. The doctrine that was never unstoppable. The bombs that did not act alone. The dictator who never escaped. The alliance that was never solitary. To uncover myth is not to diminish heroism, but to honor it. Because the truth, fragile, complex, and sometimes uncomfortable, is the only legacy worthy of those who lived it. And in the quiet after the guns fall silent, truth is the one thing history still asks of us.